In this video, we are going to audit a debridement case. So if we look at our scenario, our pre-op diagnosis is infected scalp and infected craniotomy wound. Post-op diagnosis is rejection of hardware, rejection of bone plate, and cerebrospinal fluid leak, suture rejection. So the procedure performed: debridement of craniotomy wound, removal of hardware, removal of bone, removal of sutures, irrigation of wound, and placement of drain. Let's look at our scenario. Procedure. It says under general anesthesia, the patient was placed in a prone position. The head was prepped and draped in the usual manner. The previous craniotomy wound was incised. We turned the flap down. What I did here was I removed the hardware which was present, plus the screws, bony plate, and any sutures. I then placed a piece of gel foam on top of the wound and closed the wound in layers after irrigating the wound, placing a hemovac drain in the wound and achieving hemostasis, with Bovie and roughing up the tissues with a curette. The scalp was then closed in one layer with 2O Prolene sutures, mattress-type fashion. A dressing was applied. After this, a subarachnoid drain was placed. The patient was transferred to the ICU for care. So one of the following codes is incorrect. Let's look at our two codes. Our diagnosis, it says, is orthopedic complication code T84.7XXA. So open up your ICD-10 CM book to T84.7XXA. So I'm going to share my document camera. T847. Okay, T847, infection and inflammatory reaction due to other internal orthopedic prosthetic devices, implants, and grafts. Now it tells us we need a seventh character, so we use our X's to add the seventh character, right? So that's where we get the XX, and then the seventh character. A, we know, is for initial encounter. But if you didn't know, remember, you go back to the beginning of your category. T84 is our category. So A, initial encounter. So that is a correct code. It also tells us to use additional code to identify infection. So if our documentation specified the cause of the infection, the organism, we would also assign the B code for the specific organism. Our case did not say that. So T84.7XXA is correct. So now let's look at our CPT code. The CPT our scenario says is 62143. So let's go to our book, 62143. So flip. (62143) says replacement of bone flap or prosthetic plate of skull. And if we go back to our scenario, they removed the hardware, removed the bone, removed the sutures. They didn't replace it, right? They just removed it. So if we go back to our book, right above replacement is just the removal. 62142, removal of the bone flap or prosthetic plate of skull. So that's actually the code we want. And then the scenario has modifier 78, which if you're not sure what that is, again, remember you can flip to the front of your book. 78 is unplanned return to the OR procedure room by the same physician or other qualified healthcare professional following initial procedure for a related procedure during the post-op period. So yes, once they put it on, it's not planned for them to take it back off. So we would use that. Now you can come to your find a code, and again in our tabular, if we want to start with our ICD-10 code, you can click on that. So we can enter our code here, which was the T847XXA. So 847XXA. Search. Infection and inflammatory reaction, that's the same thing. Now if we want to go back to codes, and then down to CPT. We can do same thing into our CPT code, the 62142 with the modifier 78. So you can see when we enter the modifier, it doesn't work. But if I remove the modifier, then we get the code. So the 62142 is repair procedures on the skull, meninges, and brain. Now, one thing I wanted to point out with CPT, we can go to the modifiers right here. If you wanted to find modifier 78, you can click through this way to find the different modifiers.